Abbesses is a station on Paris Metro Line 12, in the Montmartre district and the 18th arrondissement. Abbesses is the deepest station in the Paris Metro, at 36 meters, 118 feet, below ground, and is located on the western side of the Butte of Montmartre. Access to the platforms is by elevator or the decorated stairs. The station opened on the 30th of January 1913. The station's entrance, designed by Hector Guimard, 1867–1942, is one of only two remaining glass-covered, dragonfly, entrances, known as édicules. The other is located at Porte Dauphine, while a replica exists at Châtelet. Though a Guimard original, the édicule at Abbesses was originally located at Hôtel de Ville and was transferred to its current location in 1974. The entrance is technically anachronistic, since Line 12 of the Paris Metro was built by a competing firm, the Nord-Sud Company, which did not hire Guimard but engaged other architects to design its stations and station entrances. The station is named after the Place des Abbesses, referring to the abbesses of the nearby Abbey of the Dames de Montmartre. The staircase is spiral and go up round and round, and round. Take the elevator up if you metro straight there. They are not kidding about 181 steps.
When you dream it, you deny it. If you feel it, you're inspired. It's the long run.
The Wall of Love is a love-themed wall of 40 square meters, 430 square feet, in the Jehan Rictus Garden Square in Montmartre, Paris, France. The wall was created in 2000 by artists Frédéric Baron and Claire Quito and is composed of 612 tiles of enameled lava, on which the phrase, "I love you," is featured 311 times in 250 languages. Each tile is 21 by 29.7 centimeters, 8.3 in times 11.7 in. Frédéric Baron first asked his brother, and later his foreign neighbors, to write words of love in their languages, then collected, "I love you," in this way in over 300 languages and dialects of the world. Claire Quito, a calligrapher, then assembled them in a work to be realized on enamel plates. The symbolism of the wall was a personal choice of the artist. A wall is, of course, a symbol of division and separation, and here Frédéric Baron wished that a wall could also be a support for the most beautiful of human feelings. The red splashes on the wall symbolize parts of a broken heart and can be gathered to form a full heart. The wall includes the words, "I love you," in all major languages, but also in rarer ones like Navajo, Inuit, Bambara and Esperanto. The wall is open to the public free of charge. Montmartre is a large hill in Paris's northern 18th arrondissement. It is 130 meters, 430 feet, high and gives its name to the surrounding district, part of the right bank. Montmartre is primarily known for its artistic history, for the white-domed basilica of the Sacré-Cœur on its summit, and as a nightclub district. The other church on the hill, Saint-Pierre de Montmartre, built in 1147, was the church of the prestigious Montmartre Abbey. On 15 August 1534, Saint Ignatius of Loyola, Saint Francis Xavier and 5 other companions bound themselves by vows in the martyrium of Saint-Denis, 11 Rue Yvon Latac, the first step in the creation of the Jesuits. Near the end of the 19th century and at the beginning of the 20th, during the Belle Époque, many artists lived, worked, or had studios in or around Montmartre, including Amedeo Modigliani, Claude Monet, Pierre-Auguste Renoir, Edgar Degas, Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec, Suzanne Valadon, Piet Mondrian, Pablo Picasso, Camille Pissarro and Vincent van Gogh. Montmartre is also the setting for several hit films. Archaeological excavations show that the heights of Montmartre were occupied from at least Gallo-Roman times. Texts from the 8th century cite the name of Mons Mercuri, Mount Mercury. A 9th century text speaks of Mount Mars. Excavations in 1975 north of the Church of Saint-Pierre found coins from the 3rd century and the remains of a major wall. Earlier excavations in the 17th century at the Fontaine d'Eau but found vestiges of Roman baths from the 2nd century. The butte owes its particular religious importance to the text entitled Miracles of Saint-Denis, written before 885 by Hilduin, abbot of the monastery of Saint-Denis, which recounted how Saint-Denis, a Christian bishop, was decapitated on the hilltop in 250 AD on orders of the Roman prefect Fescenius Sicinius for preaching the Christian faith to the Gallo-Roman inhabitants of Lutetia. According to Hilduin, Denis collected his head and carried it as far as the Fontaine Saint-Denis, on modern Impasse Girardin, then descended the north slope of the hill, where he died. Hilduin wrote that a church had been built, in the place formerly called Mont de Mars, and then, by a happy change, Mont des Martyrs. In 1134, King Louis VI purchased the Merovingian chapel and built on the site the church of Saint-Pierre de Montmartre, still standing. He also founded the Royal Abbey of Montmartre, a monastery of the Benedictine order, whose buildings, gardens and fields occupied most of Montmartre. He also built a small chapel, called the Martyrium, at the site where it was believed that Saint-Denis had been decapitated. It became a popular pilgrimage site. In the 17th century, a priory called Abbaye d'en Bas was built at that site, and in 1686 it was occupied by a community of nuns. By the 15th century, the north and northeast slopes of the hill were the site of a village surrounded by vineyards, gardens and orchards of peach and cherry trees. The first mills were built on the western slope in 1529, grinding wheat, barley and rye. There were 13 mills at one time, though by the late 19th century only 2 remained. During the 1590 siege of Paris, in the last decade of the French Wars of Religion, Henry IV placed his artillery on top of the butte of Montmartre to fire down into the city. The siege eventually failed when a large relief force approached and forced Henry to withdraw. The abbey was destroyed in 1790 during the French Revolution, and the convent demolished to make place for gypsum mines. The last abbess, Marie-Louise de Laval-Montmorency, was guillotined in 1794. The church of Saint-Pierre was saved. At the place where the Chapel of the Martyrs was located, now 11 Rue Yvon Le Tac, an oratory was built in 1855. It was renovated in 1994. In 1790, Montmartre was located just outside the limits of Paris. That year, under the revolutionary government of the National Constituent Assembly, it became the Commune of Montmartre, with its town hall located on Place du Tertre, site of the former abbey. The main businesses of the commune were winemaking, stone quarries and gypsum mines. Russian soldiers occupied Montmartre during the Battle of Paris in 1814. They used the altitude of the hill for artillery bombardment of the city. Montmartre remained outside of the city limits of Paris until January 1, 1860, when it was annexed to the city along with other communities, faubourgs, surrounding Paris, and became part of the 18th arrondissement of Paris. In 1871, Montmartre was the site of the beginning of the revolutionary uprising of the Paris Commune. During the Franco-Prussian War, the French army had stored a large number of cannon in a park at the top of the hill, near where the basilica is today. On the 18th of March 1871, the soldiers from the French army tried to remove the cannon from the hilltop. They were blocked by members of the politically radicalized Paris National Guard, who captured and then killed 2 French army generals, and installed a revolutionary government that lasted 2 months. The heights of Montmartre were retaken by the French army with heavy fighting at the end of May 1871, during what became known as the Semaine Sanglante, or Bloody Week. In 1870, the future French Prime Minister during World War I, Georges Clemenceau, was appointed mayor of the 18th arrondissement, including Montmartre, by the new government of the Third Republic, and was also elected to the National Assembly. A member of the Radical Republican Party, Clemenceau tried unsuccessfully to find a peaceful compromise between the even more radical Paris Commune and the more conservative French government. The Commune refused to recognize him as mayor, and seized the town hall. He ran for a seat in the Council of the Paris Commune, but received less than 800 votes. He did not participate in the Commune, and was out of the city when the Commune was suppressed by the French army. In 1876, he again was elected as deputy for Montmartre and the 18th arrondissement. During the Belle Époque from 1872 to 1914, many artists lived and worked in Montmartre, where the rents were low and the atmosphere congenial. Pierre-Auguste Renoir rented space at 12 Rue Courtot in 1876 to paint Bal du Moulin de la Galette, showing a dance at Montmartre on a Sunday afternoon. Maurice Utrillo lived at the same address from 1906 to 1914, and Raoul Duffy shared an atelier there from 1901 to 1911. The building is now the Musée de Montmartre. Pablo Picasso, Amedeo Modigliani and other artists lived and worked in a building called Le Bateau Lavoir during the years 1904 to 1909, where Picasso painted one of his most important masterpieces, Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. Several composers, including Éric Satie, lived in the neighborhood. Most of the artists left after the outbreak of World War I, the majority of them going to the Montparnasse quarter. The Basilica of Sacré-Cœur de Montmartre, Sacred Heart of Montmartre, commonly known as Sacré-Cœur Basilica and often simply Sacré-Cœur, is a Roman Catholic church and minor basilica in Paris dedicated to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. It was formally approved as a National Historic Monument by the National Commission of Patrimony and Architecture on December 8, 2022. Sacré-Cœur Basilica is located at the summit of the Butte of Montmartre. From its dome 200 meters above the Seine, the basilica overlooks the entire city of Paris and its suburbs. It is the second most popular tourist destination in the capital after the Eiffel Tower. The basilica was first proposed by Félix Fournier, the Bishop of Nantes, in 1870 after the defeat of France and the capture of Napoleon III. At the Battle of Sedan in the Franco-Prussian War, he attributed the defeat of France to the moral decline of the country since the French Revolution, and proposed a new Parisian church dedicated to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. In January 1871, Bishop Fournier was joined by the philanthropist Alexandre Legentil, who was a follower of Frédéric Ozanam, the founder of the Society of Saint Vincent de Paul. Le Gentil declared that France had been justly punished for its sins by the defeat of the French army at Sedan and the imprisonment of the Pope in Italy by Italian nationalists. He wrote,
"We recognize that we were guilty and justly punished, to make honorable amends for our sins, and to obtain the infinite mercy of the Sacred Heart of our Lord Jesus Christ and the pardon of our sins, as well as extraordinary aid which alone can deliver our Sovereign Pontiff from captivity and reverse the misfortune of France. We promise to contribute to the erection in Paris of a sanctuary dedicated to the Sacred Heart of Jesus."
Montmartre was selected as the site of the new basilica due to its prominent height and visibility from many parts of the city. Since the location included land belonging to the local government as well as private owners, the French Parliament assisted in securing the site by declaring that the construction of the basilica was in the national interest. In July 1873, the proposal was finally brought forward and approved in the National Assembly with the official statement that it was necessary to efface by this work of expiation the crimes which have crowned our sorrows. The groundbreaking for the new church finally took place in 1875. Apart from its physical attributes, Montmartre, or the Hill of the Martyrs, was also chosen for its association with the early Christian church. According to tradition, it was the place where the patron saint of Paris, Saint-Denis of Paris, was beheaded by the Romans. His tomb became the site of the Basilica of Saint-Denis, the traditional resting place for the kings of France until the French Revolution. In addition, Montmartre was the birthplace of the Society of Jesus, one of the largest and most influential religious orders in the history of the Catholic Church. In 1534, Ignatius of Loyola and a few of his followers made their vows in Saint-Pierre de Montmartre, one of the oldest churches in Paris. The church survived the Revolution, although the Montmartre Abbey to which it belonged was destroyed. A competition was held for the design of the basilica and attracted 77 proposals. Architect Paul Abadie was selected, and the cornerstone finally laid on June 16, 1875. The early construction was delayed and complicated by unstable foundations. 83 wells, each 30 meters deep, had to be dug under the site and filled with rock and concrete to serve as subterranean pillars supporting the basilica. Construction costs, estimated at 7 million francs drawn entirely from private donors, were expended before any above-ground structure became visible. A provisional chapel was consecrated on March 3, 1876, and pilgrimage quickly brought in additional funding. Not long after the foundation was completed in 1884, Abadie died and was succeeded by 5 other architects who made extensive modifications. Honoré Daumet, 1884–1886. Jean-Charles Launay, 1886–1891. Henri-Pierre-Marie Rawlin, 1891–1904. Lucien Magna, 1904–1916. and Jean-Louis Hulot, 1916–1924. During construction, opponents of the basilica were relentless in their effort to hinder its progress. In 1882, the walls of the church were barely above its foundations when the left-wing coalition led by Georges Clemenceau won the parliamentary election. Clemenceau immediately proposed halting the work, and the Parliament blocked all further funding for the project. However, faced with enormous liabilities of 12 million francs from project cancellation, the government had to allow the construction to proceed. In 1891, the interior of the basilica was completed, dedicated and opened for public worship. Still, in 1897, Clemenceau made another attempt to block its completion in the Parliament, but his motion was overwhelmingly defeated since the cancellation of the project would require repaying 30 million francs to 8 million people who had contributed to its construction. The dome of the church was completed in 1899, and the bell tower finished in 1912. The basilica was completed in 1914 and formally dedicated in 1919 after World War I. The church is 85 meters long and 35 meters wide. It is composed of a large central rotunda, around which are placed a small nave, 2 transepts, and an advance choir, which form a cross. The porch of the church has 3 bays, and is modeled after the porch of Perregaux Cathedral. The dominant feature is the immense elongated ovoid cupola, 83.33 meters high, surrounded by 4 smaller cupolas. At the north end is the campanile, or bell tower, 84 meters high, containing the Savoyard, the largest bell in France. The overall style of the structure is a free interpretation of Romano-Byzantine architecture. This was an unusual architectural style at the time, and was in part a reaction against the neo-Baroque of the Palais Garnier Opera House by Charles Garnier, and other buildings of the Napoleon III style. The construction was eventually handed on to a series of new architects, including Garnier himself, who was a counselor to the architect Henri-Pierre Rollin between 1891 and 1904. Some elements of the design, particularly the elongated domes and the structural forms of the windows on the south façade, are neoclassical, and were added by the later architects Henri-Pierre Rollin and Lucien Magna. The campanile, or bell tower, on the north front, houses the 19-ton Savoyard bell, one of the world's heaviest, cast in 1895 in Annecy. It alludes to the attachment of Savoy to France in 1860. The porch of the south façade, the main entrance, is loaded with sculpture combining religious and French national themes. It is topped with a statue representing the Sacred Heart of Christ. The arches of the façade are decorated with 2 equestrian statues of French national saints Joan of Arc, 1927, and King Saint Louis IX, both executed in bronze by Hippolyte Lefebvre. The white stone of Sacré-Cœur is travertine limestone of a type called Château Landon, quarried in Soups-sur-Loing, in Seine-et-Marne, France. The particular quality of this stone is that it is extremely hard with a fine grain, and exudes calcite on contact with rainwater, making it exceptionally white. The nave is dominated by the very high dome, which symbolizes the celestial world, resting upon a rectangular space, symbolizing the terrestrial world. The 2 are joined by massive columns, which represent the passage between the 2 worlds. The plan of the interior is a Greek cross, with the altar in the center, modeled after Byzantine churches. More traditional Latin features, the choir and the disambulatory, were added around the altar. The light in interior of the church is unusually dim, due to the height of the windows above the altar, and this contributes to the mystical effect. Other Byzantine features in the interior include the designs of the tile floor and the glasswork. The mosaic over the choir, entitled The Triumph of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, Christ in Majesty, is the largest and most important work of art in the church. It was created by Luc Olivier Merson, H. M. Magna and R. Martin, and was dedicated in 1923. The mosaic is composed of 25,000 enameled and gilded pieces of ceramic, and covers 475 square meters, making it one of the largest mosaics in the world. The central figure is Jesus Christ, dressed in white, with open arms offering his heart, decorated with gold. He is joined by his mother, the Virgin Mary, and by the Archangel Michael, the protector of the Church and of France. At his feet, kneeling, is Saint Joan of Arc, offering him a crown. A figure of Pope Leo XIII offers a globe to Christ, symbolizing the world. To the right of Christ is a scene titled, The Homage of France to the Sacred Heart. A group of popes and cardinals present a model of the Basilica to Christ. On his left is, The Homage of the Catholic Church to the Sacred Heart, where people in the costumes of the 5 continents pay their homage to the Sacred Heart. At the base of the mosaic is a Latin inscription, stating that the basilica is a gift from France. To the Sacred Heart of Jesus, France fervent, penitent and grateful. The word, grateful, was added after World War I. At the top of the mosaic is another procession, called, the Saints of France and Saints of the Universal Church. In all of the mosaic, the artists adapted elements of Byzantine art in the organization of the figures, the altered perspective, and the use of polychrome colors enhanced with silver and gold. The basilica complex also includes a garden for meditation, with a fountain. The top of the dome is open to tourists and affords a spectacular panoramic view of the city of Paris, which spreads out to the south of the basilica. The interior of the basilica is surrounded by a series of chapels, mostly offered by professional groups or religious orders. The chapels are decorated with sculpture, relief sculpture, and tapestries, often relating to the professions of the donors. For example, the chapel of the Order of Notre Dame of the Sea is decorated with tapestries illustrating Christ walking on the water and the miraculous catch of fish. In the early 12th century, Montmartre was a small village on the outskirts of Paris. Despite being far from the coast, the village had a strong connection to the sea due to the fishermen and sailors who lived there. These mariners, seeking protection for their perilous journeys, decided to build a chapel dedicated to the Virgin Mary, under the title, Notre Dame de la Mer, Our Lady of the Sea. Over the years, the chapel's reputation grew. Stories of miraculous events and answered prayers spread, attracting pilgrims from far and wide. Sailors from distant lands came to Montmartre to seek blessings for safe voyages. Despite its inland location, the chapel became a revered pilgrimage site, symbolizing the powerful reach of faith. The Chapel of the Queens of France. The Chapel of the Queens of France was established to honor the memory and legacy of the queens who played pivotal roles in shaping French history. Each queen left her mark on the nation, not only through political and social influence but also through their patronage of the arts, education, and religion. The chapel serves as a spiritual space dedicated to these influential women, acknowledging their contributions to the country's cultural and historical fabric. The construction of the Chapel of the Queens of France was part of the broader development of the Sacré-Cœur Basilica, which was built in response to the national turmoil of the Franco-Prussian War in the Paris Commune. The chapel's design integrates seamlessly with the basilica's Romano-Byzantine architectural style, featuring elegant decorations that reflect the grace and dignity of the queens it commemorates. The Chapel of Saint Vincent de Paul. Saint Vincent de Paul, 1581–1660, was a French Catholic priest renowned for his dedication to serving the poor and reforming the clergy. He founded the Congregation of the Mission, Vincentians, and co-founded the Daughters of Charity with Saint Louise de Marillac. His efforts to organize charitable organizations and his commitment to education, healthcare, and missionary work have left a lasting legacy in the Catholic Church and beyond. The Chapel of Saint Ursula of Cologne. Saint Ursula is believed to have been a British princess who, along with her companions, was martyred in Cologne in the 4th or 5th century. According to legend, Ursula was traveling with a large retinue of virgins on a pilgrimage when they were attacked and killed by Huns in Cologne. The number of her companions is often cited as 11,000, although this is likely a symbolic figure. Saint Ursula is regarded as a protector of young women and a symbol of virtuous strength. Stained glass windows. These windows depict scenes from Saint Ursula's legend, including her pilgrimage and martyrdom. The vibrant colors and intricate designs convey the dramatic and inspiring story of her faith. The Chapel of Ignace de Loyola. Saint Ignatius of Loyola, 1491–1556, was a Spanish Basque priest and theologian who founded the Society of Jesus, Jesuits, in 1540. Initially a soldier, Ignatius underwent a profound spiritual conversion after being injured in battle. His subsequent dedication to religious life and education led to the formation of the Jesuits, who became known for their educational, missionary, and charitable works worldwide. The Chapel of Ignatius of Loyola at the Sacré-Cœur Basilica was established to honor the saint's legacy and his significant contributions to the Catholic Church. Dedicated to his memory, the chapel serves as a spiritual space where visitors can reflect on his teachings, his dedication to education, and his deep spirituality. The Chapel of Saint Luke. Saint Luke is one of the four evangelists in Christianity, credited with writing the Gospel of Luke and the Acts of the Apostles in the New Testament. He is often depicted as a physician, historian, and artist. Gospel of Luke. This Gospel is the third book of the New Testament and provides a thorough and orderly account of Jesus' life, from his birth to his resurrection. It emphasizes Jesus' compassion and care for the poor and marginalized. Acts of the Apostles. This book is a sequel to the Gospel of Luke, detailing the early church's formation, the spread of the Gospel, and the missionary journeys of Peter and Paul. The Chapel of the Virgin Mary. Mother of Jesus. Mary is celebrated as the mother of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, who was conceived through the Holy Spirit. Her role as the mother of the Savior is central to Christian belief. Icons and statues. Mary is a prominent figure in Christian art, often depicted in icons, paintings, and statues. Common themes include the Annunciation, the Nativity, the Pietà, Mary holding the body of Jesus after the crucifixion, and the Assumption. Symbolism. In art, Mary is often depicted wearing blue, symbolizing purity, and white, symbolizing her immaculate nature. She is also often shown with a crown, signifying her queenship in heaven. The Chapel of Saint Joseph. Saint Joseph is a central figure in Christianity, known primarily as the earthly father of Jesus Christ and the husband of the Virgin Mary. Joseph was betrothed to Mary when she conceived Jesus through the Holy Spirit. He is known for his righteousness and willingness to follow God's guidance, accepting Mary and her divine child. Joseph is the patron saint of several groups, including fathers, workers, carpenters, and the Universal Church. His role as a provider and protector makes him an exemplar for these vocations and responsibilities. The Chapel of Saint John the Baptist. Saint John Baptiste, or Saint John the Baptist, is a highly significant figure in Christianity. Known as the precursor to Jesus Christ, he is revered for his role in baptizing Jesus and preparing the way for his ministry. Saint John the Baptist is known for his ascetic lifestyle, living in the wilderness, wearing clothes made of camel's hair, and eating locusts and wild honey. He preached a message of repentance and baptized people in the Jordan River as a sign of their repentance. John the Baptist is the patron saint of many causes, including baptism, converts, and builders. Various regions and countries, such as Quebec in Canada, also regard him as their patron saint. The Chapel of Saint Francis of Assisi. Saint Francis of Assisi is one of the most venerated religious figures in Christianity, known for his deep love of nature, his commitment to poverty, and his founding of the Franciscan order. Because of his love for all creatures and his environmental consciousness, Pope John Paul II declared him the patron saint of ecology in 1979. Francis is famous for his Canticle of the Sun, a poetic prayer that praises God through various elements of creation, such as brother sun and sister moon, highlighting his profound connection with nature. The Chapel of Marguerite Marie Alacoque. Saint Marguerite Marie Alacoque is a Roman Catholic saint known for her mystical visions of Jesus Christ and her role in promoting devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. She suffered from a severe illness during her youth, which left her bedridden for several years. After making a vow to the Blessed Virgin Mary, she was miraculously cured, further deepening her spiritual commitment. Between 1673 and 1675, Marguerite Marie experienced several apparitions of Jesus Christ. In these visions, Jesus revealed his Sacred Heart, burning with love for humanity, and expressed his desire for a special devotion to this symbol of his love and mercy. Marguerite Marie was canonized by Pope Benedict XV on May 13, 1920. Her feast day is celebrated on October 16. The Chapel of St. Louis, Louis IX. Saint Louis IX, commonly known as Saint Louis, was the King of France from 1226 to 1270 and is renowned for his piety, justice, and dedication to the Christian faith. He was canonized by the Catholic Church in 1297. Louis IX is remembered for his fair and just rule. He established a system of royal justice, where people could appeal directly to the king. He was known for personally hearing cases in his court and ensuring that justice was served impartially. He reformed the French legal system, abolishing trial by ordeal and implementing measures to ensure fairer trials. He also established the Parliament of Paris, a judicial body that became a cornerstone of the French judicial system. The Chapel of the Archangel Michael. Saint Michael the Archangel is one of the most venerated angels in Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. He is considered a protector, leader of the heavenly armies, and a powerful intercessor for God's people. Michael is often seen as the protector of the faithful and the guardian of the Church. He is invoked for protection against evil and as a defender in spiritual battles. As the commander of the heavenly armies, Michael is a symbol of divine justice and power. His role in the final battle against evil emphasizes his importance in eschatological narratives. Saint Michael is the patron saint of many causes, including policemen and soldiers, symbolizing his role as a protector and warrior; the sick and suffering, reflecting his intercessory power; grocers, mariners, and paratroopers, among other professions and groups. Saint Marguerite Marie. Saint Marguerite Marie Alacoque, 1647 to 1690, was a French Roman Catholic nun and mystic who is best known for her role in the establishment of the devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Revelations. Christ revealed to Marguerite Marie his Sacred Heart, surrounded by flames, with a cross above it and a crown of thorns around it. He expressed his love for humanity and his sorrow at being met with ingratitude. Saint Thérèse de Lisieux. Saint Thérèse of Lisieux, also known as Saint Thérèse of the Child Jesus and the Holy Face, was a French Carmelite nun who is widely revered in the Roman Catholic Church. She was born on January 2, 1873, in Alencon, France, and died on September 30, 1897, in Lisieux, France. Despite living a very short life, she became one of the most popular saints of modern times, often referred to as the Little Flower. Vierge et l'Enfant. The Virgin and Child is a common theme in religious painting and sculpture, referring to the Nativity of Christ and the motherhood of the Virgin Mary. It is an iconographic theme that allows to evoke the dual nature of Christ. One of the most famous examples of the Virgin and Child is Sandro Botticelli's Virgin and Child, circa 1467. This painting depicts the Virgin Mary holding the infant Jesus in her arms. The Virgin is seated in an idyllic landscape, surrounded by angels and flowers. She is dressed in a blue robe and a red cloak, the traditional colors of the Virgin. The infant Jesus is naked and holds an apple in his hand. Saint Antoine de Padoue. Saint Anthony of Padua, 1195–1231, was a Franciscan friar, priest, and theologian who is venerated as a saint by the Catholic Church. He is one of the most popular saints in the world, and he is especially known for his miracles, his preaching, and his ability to find lost objects. Anthony is perhaps best known for his ability to find lost objects. There are many stories of people who have lost valuable items, such as jewelry or money, and have prayed to Anthony for help. In many cases, the lost items have been miraculously found. Saint-Pierre, or Saint Peter in English, was one of the 12 apostles of Jesus Christ. He is considered to be the first leader of the Christian Church, and he is often depicted holding the keys to heaven. He is also the patron saint of fishermen, sailors, and the papacy. Peter is believed to have been martyred in Rome during the reign of Emperor Nero, around AD 64–68. He was crucified upside down at his own request, as he felt unworthy to die in the same manner as Jesus. Le Sacré-Cœur, the Sacred Heart, statue in solid silver, made by Eugene Binet, who wanted to translate something of the immense sadness of this heart which has to loved men and return I received from most of them only ingratitude, according to the revelations of Jesus to Saint Margaret Mary. The basilica contains a large and very fine pipe organ built by Aristide Cavaillé-Coll, the most celebrated organ builder in Paris in the 19th century. The organ was originally built in 1898 for the Biarritz chateau of the Baron Albert de L'Espée. It was the last instrument built by Cavaillé-Coll. The organ was ahead of its time, containing multiple expressive divisions and giving the performer considerable advantages over other even larger instruments of the day. It was almost identical, tonal characteristics, layout, and casework, to the instrument in Sheffield's Albert Hall, which was destroyed by fire in 1937. However, when installed in Paris in 1905 by Cavalier Call's successor and son-in-law, Charles Mouton, a much plainer case was substituted for the original ornate case. The organ was recognized as a national landmark in 1981. It has undergone several restorations. The most recent, begun in 1985, replaced only the most severely damaged pneumatic parts, but others have deteriorated and some are no longer usable. The pipes are now covered with a thick layer of dust which impacts the pitch and timbre. Both the organ and the church itself have been recognized as national landmarks. Sacré-Cœur Basilica Dome. Climbing the almost 300 steps leading up to the dome, you will be able to take a closer look at the architecture of the basilica's roofs. At the top, enjoy an outstanding reward. The 360 degrees panoramic view on Paris is unique. The dome is open from 10:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m., last entrance at 8 p.m., every day. Sometimes, it can be closed for maintenance or due to weather conditions. The tour starts outside, after the security checkpoint. Descend into the moat immediately to your left. The ticket office is located downstairs. Sacré-Cœur is open from 6 o'clock to 22:30 every day. The dome is accessible from 9 o'clock to 1900 in the summer and to 1800 in the winter. The basilica is accessible by bus or metro line 2 at Anvers station. The Rue Foyatier. The Rue Foyatier is a street on the Montmartre Butte, outlier, in the 18th arrondissement of Paris. Opened in 1867, it was given its current name in 1875, after the sculptor Denis Foyatier, 1793–1863. One of the most famous streets in Paris for its steep staircase, which consists of 222 steps leading up to the Sacré-Cœur Basilica, giving access to the top of the hill, and the other attractions of the Upper Montmartre neighborhood. The Montmartre funiculaire runs alongside it. The stairs of Rue Foyatier figure prominently in the 1974 film Celine and Julie Go Boating, and the 2023 film John Wick, Chapter 4. The Montmartre funiculaire is an inclined transport system serving the Montmartre neighborhood of Paris, France, in the 18th arrondissement. Operated by the RATP, the Paris Transport Authority. The system opened in 1900, it was entirely rebuilt in 1935 and again in 1991. The system carries passengers between the base of Montmartre and its summit, accessing the nearby Sacré-Cœur Basilica and paralleling the adjacent staircases of Rue Foyatier. The 108 meters, 354 feet, cars climbs 36 meters, 118 feet, in under a minute and a half and carry 2 million passengers a year. The see-through stations were designed by architect François Delagiers and the cabins were designed by Roger Tallon, who also designed the carriages of the TGV Atlantique. The cabin roofs are partly glazed, allowing a view during transit. Place, Saint-Pierre.
Écoute paisiblement les sons pas de non-désir, on découvrira cette chose qui n'existe pas, l'inconnu qui est en moi, envie d'être envie de soi pour une fois. Un petit bout d'avenir, ta voix, mon corps et le temps, y a comme un goût d'infini dans le hasard de la vie, on découvrira cette chose qui n'existe pas.
Saint-Pierre de Montmartre is the second oldest surviving church in Paris, after the Abbey of Saint-Germain-des-Prés. It is one of the two main churches on Montmartre, the other being the more famous 19th-century Sacré-Cœur Basilica, just above it. Saint-Pierre de Montmartre, begun in 1133, was the church of the prestigious Montmartre Abbey, destroyed in the French Revolution. According to the earliest biography of Saint Ignatius Loyola, the martyrium of Montmartre Abbey was the location where the vows were taken that led to the founding of the Society of Jesus. According to the traditional history of the church, it was founded by Saint-Denis in the 3rd century, but only scattered signs of Gallo-Roman occupation have been detected at the much disturbed site. Merovingian sarcophagi and column capitals dating from the 7th century indicate that there was a church on the summit of the Butte of Montmartre, dedicated to Saint Peter, since the 6th century. Théodore Vauquer, the first municipal archaeologist of Paris, identified remains of a wall as belonging to the Temple of Mars, from which he believed Montmartre took its name. An early church, the Sanctum Martyrium, or Chapel of Martyrs, was built on the same site in the 9th century, to mark the traditional location on the southern side of the hill where it was believed that the patron saint of Paris, Saint Denis, was beheaded, along with the priest Eleuther and the Diacre rustic. Ignatius of Loyola and his followers chose the same site for the foundation the Company of Jesus, or Jesuit order, in 1534. In the 9th century the church became a stop for pilgrims going to the Saint-Denis Basilica. In 1133 Louis VI purchased the territory of Montmartre from the monks of the Abbey of Saint-Martin-des-Champs. He and his wife, Adelaide de Savoy, founded a royal convent for Benedictine nuns from the monastery of Saint-Pierre des Dames. The church had two functions. The eastern portion, dedicated to the Virgin Mary and to Saint-Denis, was used by the nuns, while the western portion, dedicated to Saint Peter, were used by the residents of the local parish. The abbey was reconsecrated by Pope Eugenius III in 1147, in a lavish royal ceremony where Bernard of Clairvaux, better known as Saint Bernard, and Peter, abbot of Cluny, acted as acolytes. In 1622, the chapel of the Holy Martyr was converted to a priory, which was designated the Lower Church. The 1670s and early 1680s marked a special moment in the history of the abbey. During the years when Françoise Renée de Lorraine, the sister of Marie, Duchess of Guise, was abbess, and especially while Marguerite Louise d'Orléans, Grand Duchess of Tuscany, was in confined residence there, starting in 1675, music came to play an important role in the abbey religious services. Marc-Antoine Charpentier, Marie's composer, wrote devotional music to be performed there. By the 1680s, the buildings of the Upper Abbey were in poor condition. In 1686, the religious community abandoned the buildings, except for the Abbey Church, and moved down the hill to a new priory. The church was preserved as a choir for the nuns and a sepulchre for the abbesses. During the French Revolution, the Abbey of Montmartre and the crypts were destroyed, and the chapel was transformed for a time into a Temple of Reason, then largely abandoned. In 1794, the tower was rebuilt by Claude Chappé for the purpose of sending messages by visual telegraph signals to other towers in line of sight. Following the defeat of Napoleon, it was used as a barracks by occupying Russian soldiers in 1814. It barely escaped demolition, but was largely abandoned. It was finally restored by the architect Ernest Claude Savaggio between 1899 and 1905, and was formally returned to the church in 1908. The entry to the church is nearly hidden behind a tree-filled courtyard. The facade dates from the 1775, and features three modern cast bronze doorways, added in 1980 by the Italian sculptor Tommaso Gismondi, 1906–2003. They illustrate scenes from the lives of three figures associated with the church: the Virgin Mary, Saint Peter, and Saint Denis of Paris. A gateway from the parvis of the church gives access to the cemetery of Calvary, the old graveyard of the parish. It is only open on the 1st of November, All Saints' Day. The plan of the interior follows the Romanesque model. The nave is flanked by lower side aisles. The transept between the nave and choir does not extend outside the central structure, and the apse at the east end has a ring of small radiating chapels. The nave dates to the 12th century. The pillars that support the vaulted roof have a cruciform shape, and are composed of bundles of slender columns. The capitals of columns have a variety of Romanesque and early Gothic motifs, including acanthus leaves, crotchets and stylized water lilies. The lower aisle on the right side of the nave, facing the choir, has several picturesque capitals on the columns, dating from the 12th century. These feature several fantastic birds, as well as allegorical figures. One capital features a man with the head of a pig astride another man with the head of a goat, representing luxury and sorcery. The oldest and most picturesque architecture is found in the choir and the apse. The single traverse of the choir was given a new vaulted ceiling in 1147, with crossing ribs. The apse was rebuilt at the end of the 12th century in the shape of a pentagon. Its roof is supported by a network of 6 elegant ribs. The double arch which separates the choir from the apse has another unusual feature. It rests upon 2 ancient columns, dating from the 2nd or 3rd centuries AD, with carved marble capitals from the Merovingian period, 6th–7th centuries AD. The church displays a statue of Our Lady of Montmartre, also known as Our Lady of Beauty, the patron saint of the artists of Montmartre. It was donated to the church in 1942 by a Montmartre painter, Prince Gazi. It is now the object of an annual pilgrimage on November 11th, renewing a tradition that dated back before the French Revolution. The statue of Saint Peter on his throne, located in the lower aisle on the south side, is a copy of a work displayed in St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican in Rome. The Chapel of Baptisms features an oval baptismal font, dating from 1537, and made in the form of the traditional cradle of Moses. The decoration on the font is in the Renaissance style. The painting, Christ in the Garden of Olives, in the choir, was created by Joseph-François Perichel, 1704–1781. It depicts Christ receiving a message from God carried by an angel, while the apostles sleep below, and contrasts the somber shadows of the earthly world below with the illumination of the heavens at the top of the painting. The main organ originally was located in the Church of Notre-Dame de Lorette, which was demolished in 1840. The case of the organ is made from oak, with 3 towers, and dates to the end of the 18th century. It is classified as a National Historic Object. The instrument was entirely reconstructed in 1868 to 1869 by Aristide Cavaillé-Coll. Rue Maurice Utrillo is our favorite stairway street in Paris, with its colored houses and its great perspective of the Sacré-Cœur, perched right above it. In 1963, this stairway street, previously part of Rue Muller, took the name of the painter Maurice Utrillo, who illustrated Montmartre, and this street, so well.
L'inconnu qui est en moi, envie d'être envie de soi, pour une fois.
At the foot of the stairway, Rue Paul Albert, there's L'été en Pain Douce, a restaurant with a lively terrace perfect for eating outside when the weather is nice. This restaurant replaced a 19th-century boulangerie, and it has kept the original painted glass ceilings. Rue du Chevalier de la Barre. In Woody Allen's movie, Midnight in Paris, says Marion Cotillard, while descending the stairway on Rue du Chevalier de la Barre, "I can never decide whether Paris is more beautiful by day or by night.
I can never decide whether Paris is more beautiful by day or by night."
The truth is that Paris is beautiful at all times, but at night, Paris can also be magical. The stairway on Rue du Chevalier de la Barre offers a great perspective of the Sacré-Cœur, perched right above it. But the stairway's most fascinating secret comes to light after dark. Each evening, as night falls, the stairway gets illuminated by hundreds of blue and white stars, little light spots, engraved in the slope of the hill. The left side represents the star constellations seen in the Parisian sky on January 1st. The right side portrays the position of the stars, as seen on July 1st. The creator of this Milky Way is the cinematographer and Montmartrois Henri Alacon, who did not choose the location by chance. When you look at the Rue du Chevalier de la Barre from below, you see the starry slopes, inclined at 30 degrees. Your gaze is then inevitably brought up. You take in the dome of the Sacré-Cœur, and, ultimately, your eyes reach the sky. Then they slowly ebb back to the ground and to the stairway, which in turn, becomes heaven. Don't miss your chance to walk between heaven and sky during one of the warm summer nights in Paris Montmartre. The square Nadar pays homage to the photographer Félix Tournichon, 1820–1910, nicknamed Nadar, pioneer of photography in France and the world. This is a quiet, beautiful square, the seat of one of Montmartre's reservoirs built in the Neo-Byzantine style of the Sacré-Cœur. There are sephoras, oaks, and trees from Judea too. The statue on the square represents the knight Jean-François de la Barre, a native of Abbeville near Amiens. The knight was very interested in the philosophy of Voltaire and the Enlightenment in general and frequented the anti-religious and protest circles of Abbeville. The Chevalier de la Barre was beheaded and burned in 1766 for refusing to take off his hat when a religious procession passed. There's a long story behind this process which would deserve a whole article that involves Voltaire and a country amid the war against the Enlightenment philosophers and the encyclopedists. However, everybody agrees on the disproportion between the offense and the punishment executed. Poor Chevalier de la Barre had to wait until the French Revolution to see his memory rehabilitated. Today, many streets and statues in France bear in mind this tragic judicial episode. The statue at Square Nadar represents him looking towards the Sacré-Cœur Basilica. And, of course, he has his hat on. The Place du Tertre is a square in the 18th arrondissement of Paris, France. Only a few streets away from Montmartre's Basilica of the Sacré-Cœur and the Lapin Agile, it is near the summit of the city's elevated Montmartre quarter. Place du Tertre was the heart of the prestigious Benedictine Montmartre Abbey, established in 1133 by King Louis VI. Montmartre Abbey thrived through the centuries and until the French Revolution under the patronage of the kings of France. Place du Tertre was opened to the public in 1635 as Montmartre Village Central Square. From the end of the 18th century until World War I, the whole Montmartre bohème could be seen here, painters, songwriters and poets. Place du Tertre is Montmartre's beating heart. This picturesque square, framed by 3 to 4-story 18th-century buildings and with a beautiful view over the Sacré-Cœur, corresponds to the center of the old village of Montmartre. The village of Montmartre was officially founded in 1790, and its first town hall was at 3 Place du Tertre. In the square, there is also a plaque on the facade of house number 21, which commemorates the arrival of the first automobile on Christmas Eve 1898, with Louis Renault behind the wheel. This event marks the beginning of the automobile industry in France. The local art trade is a tradition of the slopes of Bohemian Montmartre, started around 1890 by famous Montmartre artists like Modigliani, Utrillo, Valadon, and Picasso. Each year, the City Council grants 140 licenses for a 1 square meter stall in Place du Tertre to be shared by 2 artists on alternating schedules. Let's take Rue Novens, the old village's main street. This street was referred to in the 11th century as the cart road that goes from Montmartre to Paris. The even side is lined up with 18th-century townhouses with wooden shutters, wrought iron window railings, and dormers. At number 6 there's the Mere Catherine restaurant, a small bistro founded in 1793. This bistro replaced a 15th-century-old presbytery, and guests like to meet for drinking and to play wooden billiards. An old postcard shows the Mere Catherine and the pool players posing in front of the bistro. Now, let's turn left onto Rue des Saules, which plunges down the north side of the hill. Don't forget to take a picture of Le Consulate, one of the most Instagrammable cafés in Montmartre. Rue des Saules was called in the 15th century the Chemin de la Sauce, and it traversed swampy lands where willow trees, saules in French, grew. Le Consulate Café and Restaurant has been open for decades, and as a result, has witnessed plenty of changes in the surrounding district over the years. But in spite of change, the café has remained opened and can be visited today. Here, in Montmartre, you can really walk in the footsteps of the greats. The café was visited by plenty of the acclaimed artists, writers and painters that flocked to the area in the 19th century. Names of note include Picasso, Sisley, Van Gogh, Toulouse-Lautrec and Monet to name but a few. Rue Saint-Rustic is the highest point on this map of Montmartre, Paris. Rue Saint-Rustic is not only remarkable for its beauty, but it is also the oldest street on the Butte. The street has existed since the Middle Ages, although at that time it was only a simple dirt road, marking the border between the seigneuries of Saint-Denis and Montmartre. Immortalized by many artists, Rue Saint-Rustic remains one of the most picturesque and authentic Montmartre streets, with a fantastic view over the Sacré-Cœur. Despite being in the heart of Montmartre, parallel to busy Rue Norvins, this is the kind of quiet street that locals take to avoid the herds of tourists. Rue Saint-Rustic, 110 meters long and 2.60 meters wide, was the first street in Paris to officially become a pedestrian street in 1973. On 18 Rue Saint-Rustic, we find La Bonne Franquette. Formerly known as Aux Billards and Bois, the establishment was the meeting place for the Impressionists. Its garden served as a model for Van Gogh for his painting, La Guinguette, exhibited at the Louvre Museum. It is said that Charles Aznavour lived in the building, in a small apartment on the first floor. The Bistrot Chez Plumeau is located on Place du Calvaire, a stone's throw from Espace d'Allée and a bit away from the perpetual hustle and bustle of Montmartre. Place du Calvaire is a pretty square, quiet, picturesque, and with a great view of the Eiffel Tower. The stairway, Rue du Calvaire, is very picturesque too. Chez Plumeau replaced the former Auberge du Coucou, a famous cabaret much loved by the Montmartre artists in the 1950s. Today it offers decent French food and one of the most beautiful terraces in Montmartre. Have lunch or just a drink in the shade of a graceful 100-year-old wisteria. This terrace is delightful in the summer but also in winter when it is covered and heated. Inside, old stones, light brown paneling, and dark wood furniture give the place a warm Savoyard chalet atmosphere. The museum is housed in buildings which are 3 centuries old, the Hôtel de Marnay and the Maison du Bel Air. The 17th century French actor Racimond acquired the house in 1680. It was home to many famous artists and writers such as Pierre-Auguste Renoir, who painted his celebrated La Balançoire and La Belle du Moulin de la Galette here in 1876. The collections of the museum belong to the Association Le Vieux Montmartre, created in 1886, and contains paintings, photographs, posters and manuscripts that depict the history of the neighborhood, its effervescence, the bohème and cabarets from the 19th and 20th centuries. The rarely crowded museum has collections on the village's history. The setting is very romantic, and from the exterior areas, you are treated to excellent views over the vineyard of Montmartre. Take a drink in the beautiful café in the garden, immortalized by artists like Renoir in the swing. Ramon Pichot bought this little house in 1905. Catalan painter, he was friends with Dalí and Picasso, who visit him in this little house that was his painting studio. In 1908, Pichot married Germaine Gargaillot, figure of Montmartre and model for certain painters. After a trip in Spain, Germaine decided to paint the outside walls in pink and opened La Maison Rose. Their restaurant welcomed regularly all the residents of the Bateau Lavoir, and their other artists' friends. It is believed that La Maison Rose became famous because of Utrillo paintings. But Élisée Maclet painted La Maison Rose and Montmartre long before Utrillo. It is now recognized that Maclet's style greatly influenced that of Utrillo, who was then an admiring young boy of his elder painter friend. The history of La Maison Rose before and during the Second World War is a mystery. Some photos seem to indicate that it was a cabaret for a few years. In 1948, Beatrice Miolano, of Italian origin, bought La Maison Rose and ran it with her son Jean Miolano. Later, the restaurant was rented to different managements. This iconic spot was frequented by a multitude of artists, including singers who performed in Pigalle and Montmartre cabarets. Vigne du Clos Montmartre. The Montmartre vineyards of Rue Saint-Vincent, whose official name is Clos Montmartre, perpetuates the memory and tradition of the many vineyards that used to cover these slopes. In the 16th century, the inhabitants of Montmartre, then a village located outside Paris, were mainly laborers winegrowers. The vineyards were cultivated from the top of the butte to the surrounding plains. In the 17th century, the Montmartre wine was a small wine reserved for local consumption. A popular saying of the time makes fun of its quality, which seems to be exclusively diuretic. It is the wine from Montmartre. Who drinks a pint, pisses a quarter of it. This vineyard in Rue Saint-Vincent was planted in 1933 to prevent any new construction on the grounds of a former, then abandoned, open-air dance hall called Le Parc de la Belle Gabrielle. Today, this vineyard includes the most classic varieties from the wine provinces of France, as well as a selection of vigorous and fertile hybrids. The whole is embellished by decorative plantations. Public access is not permitted, except for exceptional occasions, such as the Fête des Jardins organized every autumn since 1997. Le Lapin Agile. Unmissable among the must-sees in Montmartre, Au Lapin Agile is undoubtedly one of the oldest and most authentic Parisian cabarets, but above all one of the few to still be in activity. Because so many tourists take photos of the little house with its bucolic charm. At the corner of Rue des Saules and Rue Saint-Vincent, many are unaware of its history and are undoubtedly unaware, like perhaps many Montmartre residents, which is still sung there every evening. We have to go back to the 1860s to tell the story of the place, which was first a simple tavern known as Rendezvous des Voleurs, then Cabaret des Assassins. In homage, it is said, to the crimes of Trockman, found guilty of murdering 8 members of the same family. When Saules, its owner, sold it in 1886 to Adèle Deser, a can-can dancer better known as the Beautiful Adèle, she renamed it Ma Campagne. However, it is at Lapin Agile. While in 1879 the place was already frequented by many artists and men of letters including Caran d'Ache, Clemenceau, Verlaine, Renoir and many others. The caricaturist André Gille produced a color sketch representing a rabbit wearing a thug's cap leaping from a saucepan, a liter of red wine in his hand. Reproduced on wood by Osterling, the rabbit became the new sign of the cabaret, even if it would be several years before the place officially took the name Lapin Agile. Pierre Mac Orlan knew Le Lapin well from 1900. The clientele consisted of little thugs and their friends. The amateur concert took place on Saturday evening and Sunday under the supervision of an agent. At midnight, the room was emptied. The customers rushed down the Rue des Saules in an apotheosis of shrill whistles. In 1902, Adèle sold the business to a certain Berthe, wife of Frédéric Gérard, known as Fred. He had run Zoot at 30 Rue Ravignon, today place Jean-Baptiste Clement, known for memorable fights which led to its closure. And it is he who will breathe new life into the Lapin Agile, although he was never the owner, Aristide Bruant having bought the walls in 1905 to avoid its destruction during the levelling of Rue Saint-Vincent. Berthe prepared dinner, and it is said that she happily offered a glass of wine and toast to those who did not have a penny, while new artists and other men of letters, then unknown, became regulars, among whom Francis Carco, Roland Dorelace, Max Jacob, Guillaume Apollinaire, Picasso, Derain, Braque, Modigliani and many others. All these lovely people met at the Lapin Agile to sing around Fred in a slightly crazy but wildly joyful atmosphere. After the First World War, Aristide Bruant, who had become friendly with Paolo, Fred's son, gave him singing lessons, before selling him the premises of Lapin on credit in 1922. Paolo, who was already working with his father, gradually professionalized the cabaret, because although Fred already sang there, it was more about artist meetings. From the 1920s, Le Lapin Agile officially became a performance venue open to the public, and many artists made their debut there. Among the best known, we can cite among others Rina Ketty, Pierre Brasseur, Georges Brassens and of course Claude Nougaro. Even today, the tradition continues under the leadership of another Frederick, not Gerard but Thomas. Because the Lapin Agile is also a family story, the Frederick of today being none other than the grandson of Yvonne Darley and by marriage Paolo, the son of the first Fred. The young singer, Grand Prix du Disque in 1950, before marrying Paolo, had in fact had a son, Yves Mathieu, who after having led a brilliant career in France and the United States, in turn took over the place at beginning of the 70s. Frederick, his son, was therefore, so to speak, born at Lapin Agile, and today takes care of the cabaret with his brother, under the watchful eye of their father, as valiant as ever. If the Lapin Agile is undoubtedly part of Montmartre's heritage, it nonetheless remains a very vibrant place. However, nothing or almost nothing has changed, starting with the legendary room, where history is perceptible to all the senses, from the smell of the wood, the table reserved for artists, to the paintings and photos on the walls. Imagine that perhaps you are sitting where Picasso and Apollinaire were. We enter the Lapin Agile as if we were entering an old house where figures from the past are still present, but above all we have always sung the same repertoire, with more recent songs complementing it year after year. Rue de l'Abreuvoir. In the 19th century, the residents of Montmartre followed this path to fetch water for themselves and to lead horses and cattle to the watering trough located on this street. The 19th century house at number 15 is the site of that old watering trough. A walk around Montmartre cannot be complete without a walk along Rue de l'Abreuvoir, one of the oldest and prettiest roads in Paris. Place Dalida. This tiny square has one of the most beautiful views of Montmartre, with Rue de l'Abreuvoir towards the Sacré-Cœur. The square is dedicated to Dalida, a famous pop singer who lived in Montmartre. Her incredible talent as a performer made her an icon of pop music in France.
I can see birds flying.
The singer Dalida found a home in Montmartre, where she moved in 1962. She bought a beautiful mansion on the narrow 11 bis Rue d'Orchamps. She used to eat at the neighboring Italian restaurant Graziano, down by the Moulins, and she also frequented the shops in the Rue Lepic. Dalida joined in the fight to defend and protect the butte, so dear to her.
I want to be with you both day and night.
Weakened by the loss of her former companions, all committed suicide, as well as her friend Mike Brandt, the singer died on the 2nd of May 1987, breaking the hearts of the French. "Life is unbearable to me, please forgive me," were Dalida's last words. Dalida committed suicide in her house, and she was buried in the Montmartre cemetery.
I can see the sunrise reflecting in your eyes. When I think about all of the things that you and me could be, I want to be with you both day and night. Sit on the grass beneath the moonlight. I know that life won't last forever, but at least we can grow old together.
Allée des Brouillards. The romantic Allée des Brouillards is one of the few places that still can transport us back in time to the picturesque village of Montmartre. Renoir and his family lived at number 8 from 1890 to 1897. His son, Jean, a famous film director, was born here in 1894. On the right, behind a lawn, rises the delightful facade of the Château des Brouillards, in front of which so many painters set up their easels in the past. In the 17th century, a modest farm and a mill occupied this site, the Moulin des Brouillards, which served as a press for Montmartre's wine. The name Allée des Brouillards, Mists Alley, tends toward two explanations. The morning mists generated by the abundance of the sources in the area are an allusion to the vapors of the wine. In 1764, the hovel and the ruined mill were sold to a lawyer in the French Parliament who built a beautiful house, the Château des Brouillards, parts of which you can still see today on the left side. The chateau comprised a farmyard, orchard, cellars, and wells, and it was a pleasant country residence. In 1850, the outbuildings of the chateau were torn down to make room for individual houses separated by mere hedges, now on the tiny alley with the poetic name. Its park, gradually invaded by miserable huts, became the famous maquis bush, so dear to nostalgic Montmartrois. It was not until the 1920s that the castle owner began to restore it. He launched a campaign for its conservation because the city of Paris wanted to remove the old alley and demolish the house. Today, the Château des Brouillards receives the visit of many walkers and lovers of Montmartre in search of an air of the rural and picturesque beauty of better days. Statue of Saint-Denis. Saint-Denis was the first Christian bishop of Paris in Roman times and the evangelist of the Parisians. The saint was martyrized and beheaded with his companions Rustic and Eleuthère during Emperor Valerian's prosecutions. Legend has it that after his martyrdom, circa 275, the saint washed his decapitated head in the spring that flowed here until the early 19th century before continuing quietly on his way towards the site where he was buried, current location of the crypt in the Basilica of Saint-Denis. For this reason, the Basilica of Saint-Denis became the burial place for all the kings of France, who wanted to rest eternally near the remains of the saint. Le Passe-Muraille. This is a beautiful place to see during the cherry blossom season. Here, you can see a man in bronze breaking through the wall. The Passe-Muraille, the name of the sculpture, personifies a short story written by Marcel Aimé in 1943. An excellent man named Dutilleux had the extraordinary gift of being able to walk through walls without any trouble. This is a beautiful homage to the writer, who lived in Montmartre for 40 years. A man named Dutilleux lived in Montmartre in 1943. In his 43rd year, he discovered that he possessed the ability to pass effortlessly through walls. In search of a cure, he consulted a doctor, who prescribed intensive work in medicine. Dutilleux made no change to his rather inactive life, however, and a year later still retained his ability to pass through walls, although with no inclination to use it. However, a new manager arrived at his office and began to make his job unbearable. Dutilleux began using his power to annoy his manager, who went mad and was taken away to an asylum. Dutilleux then began to use his ability to burgle banks and jewelry shops. Each time, he would sign a pseudonym, the Lone Wolf, in red chalk at the crime scene, and his criminal exploits soon became the talk of the town. In order to claim the prestige and celebrity status the Lone Wolf had gained, Dutilleux allowed himself to be caught in the act. He was put in prison but used his ability to frustrate his jailers and repeatedly escape. He then fell in love with a married woman, whose husband went out every night and left her locked in her bedroom. Dutilleux used his power to enter her bedroom and spend the night with her while her husband was away. One morning, Dutilleux had a headache and took 2 pills he found in the bottom of his drawer. His headache went away, but later that night, as he was leaving his lover's house, he noticed a feeling of resistance as he was passing through the walls. The pills Dutilleux had thought were aspirin were, in fact, the medicine his doctor had prescribed for him a year earlier. As he was passing through the final outer wall of the property, he noticed he was no longer able to move. He realized his mistake too late. The medicine suddenly took effect, and Dutilleux ended up trapped in the wall, where he remains to this day. Le Moulin de la Galette. The Moulin de la Galette is a windmill and associated businesses situated near the top of the district of Montmartre in Paris. Since the 17th century, the windmill has been known for more than just its milling capabilities. 19th century owners and millers, the Debray family, made a brown bread, galette, which became popular and thus the name of the windmill and its businesses, which have included a famous guinguette and restaurant. In the 19th century, Le Moulin de la Galette represented diversion for Parisians seeking entertainment, a glass of wine and bread made from flour ground by the windmill. Artists, such as Renoir, Van Gogh, Ramon Casas and Pissarro have immortalized Le Moulin de la Galette. Likely the most notable was Renoir's festive painting, Bal du Moulin de la Galette. Villa Léandre. Created in 1926, Villa Léandre was initially named Villa Junot, after its larger street tributary. Its current name comes from the caricature artist Charles Léandre, whose studio was located nearby. The cobbled cul-de-sac is lined with colorful Anglo-Norman style houses covered with climbing plants and with small front yards. Le Bateau Lavoir. Formerly a ballroom and then a piano factory, the Bateau Lavoir facing Place Émile Godot was divided into 20 small workshops for artists. The place was without heating and provided with a single water point. The Bateau Lavoir hosted a good part of all the art people of the time: Le Douanier Rousseau, Amedeo Modigliani, Henri Matisse, Georges Braque, Guillaume Apollinaire, Jean Cocteau. All went through the small, cramped workshops of this unusual house. In 1970, the Bateau Lavoir's wooden structure did not resist a terrible fire and only the façade, today listed as a historical monument, survived. While residing at the Bateau Lavoir, Picasso painted works such as Young Girl with a Flower Basket, and Garçon à la Pipe, Boy with a Pipe, in 1905, and one of his most noted works, Les Demoiselles d'Avignon in 1907, considered by art historians as a proto-cubist painting, the precursor of a movement that became known as Cubism. Studio 28. Described by Jean Cocteau as the cinema of masterpieces and the masterpiece of cinemas. Le Studio 28 opened in 1928 as Paris's first avant-garde cinema, and it was a favorite meeting place of surrealists like Louis Buñuel, Salvador Dali, Abel Gance, and Jean Cocteau. Classified art and essay, this neighborhood cinema is the oldest Parisian cinema still in operation, which offers a mix of independent and big-budget European and American films today. Run by the family Rouleau since 1948, its owners haven't stopped to entertain and innovate. They started programming different films in the same week and proposed a preview every Tuesday, which welcomed the biggest cinema stars over the years. In 1969, La Studio 28 was the first to create a loyalty card. Studio 28 is more than a cinema, it's a real place of life in Montmartre. There's also a bar and a winter garden for drinks. Moulin Rouge. On 6 October 1889, the Moulin Rouge opened as the Jardin de Paris, an outdoor garden café concert, at the foot of the Montmartre Hill. Its creator Joseph Oyer and his manager Charles Zeidler were formidable businessmen who understood the public's tastes. The aim was to attract wealthy individuals to experience the ambiance of the fashionable district of Montmartre, which was perceived as a form of slumming. The elaborate setting, featuring a garden adorned with a large elephant, provided an environment where individuals from various social strata could interact. This included workers, local residents, artists, the middle class, businessmen, stylish women, and tourists passing through Paris. Nicknamed the First Palace of Women by Oyer and Zeidler, the cabaret swiftly garnered significant acclaim. During its early years, the Moulin Rouge featured extravagant shows inspired by the circus, along with attractions that gained widespread fame, such as Patamane. Concert dances were organized daily at 10 p.m. On 19 April 1890, the first revue, Circassiens et Circassiennes, debuted. In 1893, the Bal des Quat'Arts sparked scandal with its procession featuring a nude Cleopatra surrounded by young naked women. On 12 November 1897, the Moulin Rouge closed for the first time to mourn the passing of its manager and co-founder, Charles Zeidler. In 1900, the Universal Exhibition attracted visitors from around the world to the Moulin Rouge, solidifying Paris's reputation as a city of decadent pleasure. This led to the establishment of imitation, Moulin Rouges, and Montmartres, in many other countries. In January 1903, the Moulin Rouge underwent renovation and improvement under the direction of Edward Neermans, a prominent architect of the Belle Époque era. Until the outbreak of the First World War, the Moulin Rouge became renowned for its operetta performances. Tragically, on 27 February 1915, the Moulin Rouge was destroyed by fire during building works, resulting in a 9-year closure. In 1925, the rebuilt Moulin Rouge reopened its doors to the public. Following World War I, Francis Salabert assumed management of the Moulin Rouge. As a businessman rather than a showman, he entrusted Jacques Charles, a prominent impresario, with revitalizing the cabaret. The Moulin Rouge experienced a resurgence with the performances of stars such as Mistinguett, Jean Aubert, and Maurice Chevalier, as well as the introduction of American revues featuring the Hoffman Girls. In 1923, composer and conductor Raphael Beretta proposed a reconstruction of the Moulin Rouge's music hall on a larger scale. The iconic mill structure, supported by a central facade adorned with oval dormers, was designed by Gesmar, a 20-year-old set designer whose work became synonymous with the venue. In 1929, Mistinguett retired from the stage, leading to the transformation of the Moulin Rouge's ballroom into an ultramodern nightclub. During the Second World War, 1939 to 1945, the Moulin Rouge was highlighted in the German occupation guide as a must-visit attraction in Paris. Its stage shows continued for the occupation troops and were mentioned in autobiographies of German officers such as Ernst Junger and Gerhard Heller. The Germans facilitated recreational visits in Paris for their troops, promoting the motto, Jeder einmal in Paris, everyone once in Paris. The widespread prostitution during the occupation eventually led to the implementation of the Loi Martha Richard in 1946, which closed bordellos and reduced stage shows to dancing events. In 1944, shortly after the liberation of Paris, Edith Piaf, who had performed frequently at social gatherings for German forces during the war, returned to the stage at the Moulin Rouge. She was accompanied by Yves Montand, a newcomer chosen to perform with her. On June 22, 1951, Georges France, also known as Joe France, founder of the Bellagio in Paris, acquired the Moulin Rouge and initiated extensive renovation efforts. Architects Pierre Devenoy, Bernard de la Tour d'Auvergne, and Marion Tournon Branly were tasked with enhancing and outfitting the new auditorium. The envisioned decor by Joe France, largely executed by Henri Mahé, a prominent designer of the era, remains intact to this day. The return of evening dances, acts, and the iconic French can-can marked a revival at the Moulin Rouge. In 1955, Joe France transferred ownership to brothers Joseph and Louis Clerico, proprietors of Lolido, with Jean Boucher assuming the managerial role. The tradition of the French can-can continued, choreographed by Ruggero Ungaletti. Transformations in 1959 included renovations to the Moulin Rouge's kitchens, while the introduction of the Revue Japonaise in 1960 showcased Japanese artists and popularized kabuki in Montmartre. In 1962, Jackie Clerico, son of Joseph Clerico, assumed leadership, ushering in an era of expansion with the enlargement of the auditorium, installation of a giant aquarium, and the introduction of the first aquatic ballet. The Revue Can-Can, devised by Doris Haug and Ruggero Angeletti, premiered the same year. In February 1988, despite the original building's destruction in 1915, the Moulin Rouge celebrated its centenary with the premiere of the Revue Formidable, a prestigious event attended by Prince Edward.
The Moulin Rouge. Because it's the Moulin Rouge. Because it's
Café des Two Moulins. Café des Two Moulins is a café in the Montmartre area of Paris, located at the junction of Rue Lepic and Rue Cauchois. It takes its name from the two nearby historical windmills, Moulin Rouge and Moulin de la Galette. The café has gained considerable fame since its appearance in the 2001 film Amélie, in which it is the workplace of the title character. It has since become a popular tourist destination. The café was listed in the Registre du Commerce et des Sociétés in 1964. According to Marc Faugdoir, the current owner, the establishment opened its doors at the beginning of the 20th century, but did not take its current name until the 1950s. It had already been used for two other films before it was in Amélie.